We are back with round 3 of the Premier Constructed Tournament at Red Raccoon Games on July 30th. We've got our two undefeated players going at it for round 3, the last round. We have Odd Han Solo from Jump to Lightspeed on that thermal oscillator base going up against Boba Fett, Data Vault. Both these leaders, those spotlight leaders from Jump to Lightspeed, showing down. Let's check it out. On the left, we have myself with that Odd Han thermal oscillator deck, and Nate on the right with Boba Fett on Data Vault. And let's take a moment to appreciate Nate's playmat with that beautiful Fett's Fire Spray artwork. Perfect for this deck, as he's even playing that card with that artwork. Maybe we'll see it this match. So myself having the initiative, definitely trying to get that aggressive start, either having C3PO or the two 1-drops to start flooding space. See a Millennium Falcon in hand. Nate's mulliganing. Didn't like what he got before. We saw him in a previous match really struggling when he didn't get that turn 1 play, so very important for him. Looks like there are two Republic Y-Wings in my hand. So able to get that 2 1-drop start. Nate hoping for something good. He's going to be wanting to control the board, maybe ramp a little, and get a big unit and fire off an overwhelming barrage to clear out the space, especially if there are a bunch of small space units out for myself. So you do see a TIE bomber in hand, but looks like it might have been resourced. So we tap 1 for the Republic Y-Wing, a 1-3. And we do see a TIE bomber come out. Another Y-Wing. Nate claims initiative here. So that TIE bomber, a 0-4, but on attack, deals 3 indirect damage to who you're attacking. And then he can, after that indirect damage is dealt, Nate can trigger the Boba Fett's leader ability, that when you deal non-combat damage, you may deal a point of indirect damage to a player. So Nate on the initiative here. Let's see what he has. The one thing about trying to put like the Vader pilot, like we saw in the previous game, is that these Han Solo decks often run something like Waylay or the Sanctioner shuttle that can deal with it and get rid of the pilot. So Nate attacks base, 2 damage dealt to Thermal Oscillator off indirect, and then 1 damage each to the Y-Wings. Using the Han Solo action ability to see the top, it is Millennium Falcon, a 3-cost unit, so the Y-Wing does get a buff, hitting base for 2. We know that really important Jump to Lightspeed Falcon will be drawn. A great way to put some pilots, and Nate has the claim here, no turn 2 play, so the Y-Wing goes in for 1 damage onto the bomber. And we're going to see 3-tap for the Millennium Falcon from Spark of Rebellion, comes in ready and deals 3 more damage to the bomber. You know, this is very smart with these aggressive space decks. You don't want your opponent to have any sort of space unit that can get piloted or buffed to start taking out your units. So I will have to pay 1 resource to keep the Millennium Falcon flying in space there, otherwise known as paying for gas. So 3 resources up for me. Nate does play that Fett's Fire Spray, that Prestige version, as we see that big art on the playmat. Dealing 2 indirect damage when played, because you control Boba Fett, and then Nate triggering Boba Fett's leader ability. So all 3 go into base. We see a 5-costed Han Solo unit being revealed with the Han Solo leader ability. So any of these units will get a buff here. Thinking about, do I want to trade the Falcon in to take out the Fett's Fire Spray? Again, that Fett's Fire Spray can start wreaking havoc if left unchecked. Checking to see what else we got in hand. So we're just going to take that out. just to continue to build up the board. So 3 for that Millennium Falcon we saw earlier, and both Y-Wings are going to go in for 1 apiece. 5 damage on Thermal Oscillator, 4 damage on Data Vault. So not a whole lot of damage on Nate's Data Vault base. However, we are going into the flip turn for Han Solo. 3 odd-costed units already on board, including that Millennium Falcon that can have an extra pilot and gets +1 power for each pilot you have. So that can get out of control very quickly. Nate, 5 resources open, no units on board. He's going to want to try to get some units to stick here. We see the TIE Dagger Vanguard coming out, deal 2 damage to a damaged unit, taking out a Y-Wing. You see a Boshek in hand. That is a pilot, and you discard 2 cards from the top of your deck, and if they're odd, you get to add them to your hand. So Nate with 2 resources open. So you don't have to worry about something like a disabling Fang Fighter here. So we see 3 resources tapped here. Figuring out what card to play. That's going to be open fire to take out the TIE Dagger Vanguard. Again, just keeping space cleared. Don't want to get any pilots out there. Now 2 for Boshek. We're going to go ahead and discard a Cartel Turncoat and a Sanctioner Shuttle. Both odd costs go back into the hand. Boshek giving +1, +2 as a pilot. And now Han Solo, possibly flipping onto a unit. Again, you ready resource when it's deployed as a pilot. You ready resources equal to the amount of odd-costed units and upgrades, including himself as a pilot. So we see 4 resources readied. That Millennium Falcon, base power 3, and then gets +1 and +3 from the 2 pilots, but then another +2 for having 2 pilots. So that is going to be 9 damage there, bringing Nate up to 13. So a unit swing for 9 can get out of control. See 1 for the Cartel Turncoat, another 2 for the Han Solo unit pilot coming out, giving +2 power to the Y-Wing. And when it is attached as a pilot, the attached unit can attack right away. So dealing another 3 damage to base. So Nate, no units out, 16 damage on Data Vault. The strategy here is to keep the space arena clear so there's nothing that Nate can attach his Boba Fett leader on. Because when Boba Fett is deployed onto a vehicle, you may deal 2 damage to, 4 damage across the board. And we see power failure from Nate. Really cool card. Don't see that a whole lot. It costs 2. It's from Spark of Rebellion, and you may defeat all upgrades on a unit. So just clearing all those pilots out of that crowded Falcon. Very heads up play. Taking it from 9 down to 3 power, and the disabling Fang Fighter taking out the other Han Solo pilot. But we're going to go ahead and play Sanctioner Shuttle, get that vehicle out there, so no pilot deploy. Boba Fett deploys on the ground. He's a 4/6. So going into base, 9 damage on the Thermal Oscillator. We see C-3PO come down. A spectator saying that we may have missed some damage, but we got that all fixed and caught up. So C-3PO, we're going to guess number. That was a blind guess, just using math and statistics, guess 1. And that Cartel Turncoat is going to come down and hit the field. And the Millennium Falcon going to swing for another 3, bringing Nate to 22 damage on base. So big space arena. No pilots there, but that's going to be tough to deal with. Nate's going to hope for a overwhelming barrage or something that can clear out multiple units. We see maybe an open fire in there, and Maul. And Maul can just come out and defeat that C-3PO. But myself at 6 resources, Nate at 7. We see Ruthless Raider come out. 2 damage to base, 2 damage to the Y-Wing. But now with only 1 resource open for Nate, this kind of gives me free reign to do what I want for the turn. So the Han Solo leader ability used. Boshek revealed. We're going to get that attack in for C-3PO, guess 3 off the top, and get Boshek, which can attach to the Millennium Falcon, getting it a big buff, but also getting more cards in the hand. It's really important to get that card draw in these decks, as you need more gas to finish out the game. So, Sanctioner Shuttle, 2 damage to base. Nate claims, and now we see the rest of the turn, Boshek going on the Falcon. And I get to draw Cassian Andor and Poe Dameron, 2 great cards. That Millennium Falcon's going to hit for 5, bringing Nate up to 30. And now these 2 Cartel Turncoats will do the trick and finish him off. So very cool to see Nate having that upgrade hate. Unfortunately, not enough in this game. He's going to hope for more of an aggressive space start. Now, he did miss a turn 2 play that was that really hurt him. So hopefully he can get something to really slow me down in space this game. His hand, we see some good cards. We see maybe a planetary bombardment. We're going to see what else he's there. He likes it, so he's going to keep that, and let's see what he has. He's going to tap 1 for the First Order Stormtrooper, a 2-1, but on attack and when defeated does indirect damage. We're going to start off my phase with using Han Solo leader ability, and we're going to reveal a card off the top. Now C-3PO comes down and is going to correctly guess Boshek, so just getting some card draw early on. So not as aggressive, but sometimes if you get a lot of those 1 drops in your hand, you can have a turn 3 where you just play 4 units in space and just and your board starts to really spiral out of control. Because the question is, does Nate want to take out the card draw or wait to take things out in space? So the Stormtrooper swings 2 into base, and we're seeing where the indirect damage is going to go. 1 on C-3PO and 1 to base. We're going to use the Han Solo ability, reveal another C-3PO, and C-3PO is going to attack into the Stormtrooper, guessing 2. Of course, being able to draw that card, great draw engine here. We're going to take 2 damage back onto C-3PO, indirect damage back onto the base. And Nate does get that super laser tech. And without having coordinate online, I cannot play something like a Sanctioner Shuttle to capture it. So we're going to see a Mining Guild TIE Fighter followed by Boshek to get some card draw. We see Millennium Falcon and a Cartel Turncoat go into hand, getting discarded off of Boshek. Since they're both odd costed, they go right to the hand. So we're going to likely see Nate swing in with the Super Laser Tech, probably taking out C-3PO. So instead he goes 4 for open fire, taking out 3 for open fire. He accidentally tapped an extra resource there. That's going to take out that Mining Guild TIE Fighter. And he has me deal the indirect damage to myself, which I took. And C-3PO is going to attack 1 into base, and we're going to draw Daring Raid off of that. And the Super Laser Tech is going to clear that out. So Nate doing a great job of keeping the board clear at the 4 resource turn and ramping. meaning Boba Fett can come out the next turn. So we see the Mining Guild TIE Fighter come down for 1. And another 3 for the Millennium Falcon. So being able to build up a board, but both players going into the flip turn, only 1 damage on the Data Vault, so not the aggressive start we like to see out of these Han Solo decks. So we'll see what Nate can do to start turning this around. You know, starting to ramp into some big units can get really scary really quick for the aggro player. But with a lot of card draw off the C-3PO and the Boshek, I have plenty of options here. And I'd love to be able to put some pilots on that Millennium Falcon and start hammering some damage here. So it's going to start off tapping 4 for the Fett's Fire Spray, do 2 indirect damage. We're going to take 2 onto base, and then another one from the leader ability, also onto base. 8 on Thermal Oscillator. We're going to reveal Cassian Andor. So able to power up the Mining Guild TIE Fighter. So the question is, what do you do? Because you know that Boba Fett can deploy and take out that Falcon. So the TIE Fighter is going to go into base for 2. We're going to see Nate deploy Boba Fett on the Fire Spray, take out the Falcon. So a very scary unit. That's an 8/8, dealing 2 indirect damage on attack there. So all 5 resources open. Only a TIE Fighter out for myself. So how are we going to deal? How are we going to try to deal a lot of damage amidst this big fire spray out there that's very scary? Can pretty much take out anything I have. We do see the Millennium Falcon from Sparkle Rebellion, sometimes called the Fast Falcon, because it comes in ready. So that is a card I like to see on the flip turn, because even if they clear my board, I can play that and always have a ready unit to deploy Han Solo on. So I do play C-3PO first, get that card draw. So the new Cassian was on the top. And we're going to see 3 tapped for the Millennium Falcon. Now, when Han deploys on the Falcon, will ready 3 resources. And that is a 3/4 pilot, so bringing the Falcon up to being a 6/4. And now that can be defeated by the Fett's Fire Spray on attack. And the Fire Spray would theoretically stay alive. Now the thing is, if you start dealing a lot of damage into base, Nate could have that overwhelming barrage deal 10 damage across the board and just clear out a lot of your big units. So the question is, we see some damage spells, some daring raids, and some and maybe some open fires in hand. Thinking, so we're going to deal 6 damage into the fire spray, giving it 2 health left, and then 1 for the daring raid, taking it out. Again, we don't want to give Nate a big unit where he can just fire off that overwhelming barrage. So we're just going to try to slowly but surely build up that board. So we bring 2 1-drops out there. We see the Crackshot V-Wing. Its 1 plate ability is if you do not control another fighter unit, deal 1 damage. But both the TIE and the Cartel Turncoat are fighters, so that comes in as a 2/2. And we have the C-3PO in the ground arena that can generate some card draw. So this is not where these Han Solo aggressive decks want to be at this turn, going into um, 6 resources for Han, 7 for Boba Fett. You definitely want to be closer to dealing lethal here, and only 3 damage on Data Vault. So Nate just needs to find ways to control the board and just get some big units out and start hammering down on base. So we see 1 tap for the First Order Stormtrooper. Trying to figure out if the indirect damage is when played. Realizing it's not. So Han Solo ability use, we see open fire on top. We're going to go ahead and buff the Cartel Turncoat. It's going to swing in for 3, just trying to get this chip damage out here. So Nate's going to tap 5. And just start trying to clear things out. He's going to clear out the Mining Guild TIE Fighter and the Crackshot V-Wing. Not exactly what you want to see. However, you know, he's clearing out some units. And sometimes that's just what you have to do to prevent damage into your base. So that Stormtrooper, a 4-3 for the phase. So C-3PO doesn't want to attack into it. We're going to deal 1-2 base off of C-3PO and guess 3 for open fire since we saw it earlier. Have 6 resources open. So it looks like we're looking into the resource row. I'm going to tap 5 and smuggle out Cassian Andor. When played with smuggle, it comes out ready. So nice 3 points of damage to start chipping away at Data Vault. 1 resource open, and we're going to see 1 tap for Daring Raid, deal 2 to the Stormtrooper. And after this phase ends, he'll lose that buff from Overwhelming Barrage and get defeated. So I pass here. Now the question is that we were confirming. If he deals the indirect damage off the Stormtrooper and uses Boba Fett's ability, is Boba Fett then exhausted going into the next turn? You know, when does that exhaust happen? But we realize that the Stormtrooper dies at the beginning of the regroup phase, and that's when Boba is triggered. And then at the end of the regroup phase, that's when everything's readied back up, so the leader would be readied and be able to be used the next turn there. So that's what we were discussing there. If we are wrong, feel free to comment below. But we think that we interpreted the rules correctly there. So 2 points of indirect damage coming off of that defeat. 1 on each of Cassian and C-3PO. We also have that Cartel Turncoat in space. So looking at base damage, 8 on Thermal Oscillator, which is a 27 health base, and only 10 on Data Vault. So need to do 24 more points of damage from Han Solo. And we're going into 8 resources for Nate, so this is where we can get some scary stuff coming down. Looks like Nate taps all 8 for Devastator, and that's a big unit. It's a 9-6. You deal 4 points of indirect damage when played, but guess what? Devastator allows you to choose where the damage is going, and then we have another point of indirect damage coming from Boba Fett. And he gets to draw a card off of the Cartel Turncoat, and I think he drew another Devastator. So Devastator allowing you to choose where all indirect damage goes. This is not what the aggressive decks want to see. If he's able to fire off an overwhelming barrage, or a planetary bombardment, this just could spell game over. So now the question is, do I have a way to deal with a Devastator, potentially 2? So we're going to see 3 for the Millennium Falcon, and then 1 for Republic Y-Wing, and then we're going to see 3 for Waylay. And the thing is that Nate's going to be able to play that again, deal 5 points of indirect damage wherever he chooses next turn. However, that would be using most of his resources. So you if that's the play, you know what to expect, and he's not going to be able to clear the board if that's his only play. So sometimes you just have to say that's what's going to happen, and then you hope you draw into some stuff. Remember, we have C3PO out. We've been drawing a lot of cards with the thermal oscillator base. We're going to be seeing more consistent draws. So at this point, I'm going to have a lot of cards I want to see in my deck, in my hand. So we do see that Devastator come out again. We're going to see where Nate wants to deal it. I think he wants to make sure there's no way those space units can clear it out. So he's going to deal 4 to the Millennium Falcon, which of course can typically get big off of some pilots, and especially if you have the Han Solo pilot, it gives it that first strike, when played. So we're going to see Han Solo leader ability use open fire on top. That Y-Wing's going to deal 2 into Devastator. And now here's the thing. There's no way to take out C-3PO. The C-3PO can draw the open fire, and the open fire can take it out. So good way of dealing that. Now, spoiler, there is another open fire in hand. So I make sure to draw first, so Nate thinks that I didn't have the open fire to begin with. And so he wouldn't be expecting a second one. Because if he plays that second Devastator, an open fire plus Daring Raid would be able to take it out. So we do see the open fire come out. Cassian's going to go into base. So we're just chipping away 19 damage on Data Vault here. 3 come out, just play Sanctioner Shuttle. We know he's only going to be playing big units, so we don't worry about losing the capture ability. Boshek's going to come out. We see Poe Dameron and Plo Koon, 2 very strong units, come out. Or get discarded and added to the hand. So drawing a lot of cards. I think we see 2 Plo Koons in hand. Over on Nate's side, can't quite make out his hand, but we know he's going up to 10 resources, 9 resources for myself. Typically, I don't want to have that many resources, but I already have a handful of a lot of cards, and so if I'm able to play a lot of big threats and make it hard for Nate to deal with, that's how I'm going to get in this game and just start chipping away. So Nate tapping 8, we see Devastator coming down. He's going to take out the Sanctioner Shuttle, dealing all 5 from that when played. He only has 2 resources open. So I basically get most of the turn to do what I want to do. And so Millennium Falcon shown off the top from the Han leader ability. C-3PO attack for base and draw that Millennium Falcon. That's really good right now because that's just 3 damage you can get into the base. Nate taps 2 for the Kylo's TIE silencer just to get more units out there. Nate is all tapped out. We see Cassian go in for 3. And we know we have at least the Millennium Falcon and open fire, so if needed, we can clear that Devastator. Like I mentioned before, we do not want to keep that Devastator out there because an overwhelming barrage is just going to be really bad there. So Poe Dameron coming down, and then Waylay for the Devastator, bringing it back to hand. So we know if Nate wants to replay it, he's going to have to use most of his resources. Now, Poe Dameron, very strong here. A 6/6, but on attack you may discard a card up to 3 cards with the option to defeat an upgrade, deal 2 damage to a unit or base, and then have your opponent discard a card. Myself checking how many cards I have left in my deck, I really have only 8 cards in hand. Nate on Data Vault has a big stack there. Of course, I've been going through this really fast by drawing through C-3PO and Boshek, but this is the point of Thermal Oscillator. At this point, I have all the cards I need, so if you're going up against something like this, you got to expect that your opponent has the cards in their deck if they haven't played them yet. So we see Devastator come down again. Nate figuring out where to deal 5 damage. So not quite enough to kill Poe Dameron. He would love to take that out, but he's going to go ahead and take out Cassian. He's going to deal 1 damage there, and looks like the rest of the 4 onto Poe. So it can be taken out by something like a Daring Raid. So the Republic Y-Wing shown. So Poe can get a buff off of here, since they have different odd cards. We're going to discard 2 cards, and we're going to deal 2 damage to base. And then we're going to have Nate discard a card. He's going to discard Open Fire. So now with Poe swinging into base, bringing Nate up to 32 points of damage. He has 3 resources open. We do see an Open Fire there. That's going to take out C-3PO. But all resources tapped. And now 3 tapped for the Millennium Falcon. Has 4 health. That Kylo's silencer does not have enough power to defeat it. And we see Odd Han Solo on Thermal Oscillator taking game 2. Very long game, very resilient. Sometimes you just got to keep putting out threats and hoping they stick long enough. So great gameplay from both players in a great 3-round tournament. Thanks for watching. Hope you watch the next one. See ya.